Picture this. You are standing on a pier at midnight, looking at a reflection of the moon in the black water. You throw a stone to break the image, but the water does not ripple. The stone simply vanishes, and the moon's reflection remains perfectly, stubbornly still. That is the feeling currently vibrating through the halls of the China National Space Administration. On July 14th, 2025, the universe stopped behaving like water and started behaving like a mirror. 3i Atlas has arrived, and it is not interested in our laws of motion. It is moving with a quiet, terrifying intentionality that has forced every astronomer on Earth to set down their coffee and look again. The data is cold, hard, and deeply inconvenient. On August 3rd, 2025, the Purple Mountain Observatory recorded a deceleration event that should have shredded any known celestial body. 3i Atlas slowed from 60 kilometers per second to a precise hovering crawl over the course of just 12 minutes. No heat signature was detected, no exhaust, no chemical footprint. According to Dr. Wu Ji of the National Space Science Center, the object simply decided to stop. It is currently positioned at exactly 1.5 million kilometers from Earth, sitting precisely in the L1 Lagrange point, as if it were a surveyor marking a plot of land. The first thing that should terrify you is the material. Spectroscopic analysis shows no carbon, no silicate, and no ice. It is composed of a synthetic lattice that reflects 98% of all electromagnetic radiation. It is essentially a 5-kilometer mirror. The second impossibility is the noise. On September 12th, 2025, the 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope detected a repeating signal at 4.2 Hz. This is not a pulsar. It is a rhythmic, low-frequency hum that matches the delta wave of a human brain in deep sleep. The third anomaly is the shadow. When 3i Atlas passes in front of distant stars, it does not just block their light, it bends it. It is warping the space around it without possessing the mass required to do so. It is a ghost with the gravity of a mountain. What if we are looking at this all wrong? What if the object isn't a visitor at all? What if it is a return? Imagine a security system that only activates when the room becomes too crowded. For billions of years, this solar system was quiet. Then, in the last century, we started leaking radio waves, satellites, and noise. Perhaps 3i Atlas is not an explorer. Perhaps it is a gardener coming to check on a fence that hasn't been repaired in 3,000 years. The Han Dynasty records of 104 before the Common Era speak of a pale guest that hung in the sky for 3 months, unmoving and silver. The texts say the birds stopped singing and the tides became predictable to the second. We always assumed this was a supernova or a comet with an unusual tail. But those words are doing a lot of work to cover up our ignorance. The Sumerian tablets describe a king of the sky who sits in a house of glass, watching the grain grow. These are not myths. They are memories of the last time the mirror was polished. You are lying there now, perhaps in a bed in Ohio or a flat in Berlin, thinking that you are a spectator in this cosmic drama. But here is why you are wrong. If the frequency of the object matches your brainwaves, you aren't just watching the discovery, you are part of the hardware. We are a young species, barely out of our planetary cradle, and we are suddenly realizing that the nursery has a camera in the corner. It is a heavy thought to carry into sleep, the idea that our privacy was an illusion of the dark. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. But as the China National Space Administration continues to peel back the layers of this data, they found something that makes the mirrors and the signals seem like child's play. They found a countdown, and this is where it gets dark. Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, you could argue that a mirror in space is just a rare geological fluke. Some scientists, including the ever-cautious voices at the European Space Agency, tried to suggest it was a fragment of a metallic protoplanet. But on October 29, 2025, that theory was buried under 10 centimeters of cold, hard logic. The object changed its shape. It didn't melt or break. It reconfigured. Over the span of 6 hours, 3I Atlas shifted from a sphere into a perfect, elongated octahedron. Nature does not build in right angles at a scale of 5 kilometers. That's not natural physics. That's activation. Think about the sheer mechanical audacity required for a structure larger than most terrestrial cities to fold itself like a piece of paper. On October 30th, 2025, the China National Space Administration's high-resolution radar at the Kashgar station captured the structural shift in real time. It was not a chaotic collapse. It was a sequence. Thousands of interlocking triangular plates, each a kilometer across, slid over one another with a friction that emitted no heat and produced no sound. It was the universe's largest origami project, performed in the freezing vacuum of space. Dr. Liu Xiaoping of the National Space Science Center noted in a leaked memo that the internal geometry of 3I Atlas is not just complex, it is adaptive. It is reacting to our observation. Every time we point a new sensor at it, the object seems to offer a new surface, a new angle, a new way to frustrate our understanding. It is a very polite form of psychological warfare. Unfortunate timing for the doctoral students who had just finished their theses on the object's spherical mass distribution. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to mask the sheer existential dread currently settling into the astronomical community. By November 3rd, 2025, the octahedron had stabilized. It now hangs at the Lagrange point like a giant, silver diamond, catching the sun's rays and focusing them into a tight beam that misses the Earth by only a few hundred kilometers. It is as if 3I Atlas is checking its aim. Imagine standing in a dark room and seeing a laser pointer dancing on the wall, just inches from your head. You don't know who is holding the pointer, and you don't know why they haven't pulled the trigger. You only know that you are being framed in a crosshair. This is the state of our planet today. We are the target of a calibration that we do not understand. Scientists at the European Space Agency have suggested that this beam is actually a data transfer mechanism, a way of dumping billions of years of information into the solar wind. But the China National Space Administration has a different theory. They believe the beam is a tether. Let me back up, because to understand the tether, we have to look at the history of human vanity. We have always assumed that if an interstellar object visited us, it would be to talk to us. We expected a greeting, a radio burst, or perhaps a golden record of our own. But 3I Atlas is indifferent. It is so indifferent, it feels like an insult. It hasn't sent a single byte of data that we can translate. It hasn't acknowledged our satellites or our frantic laser pulses. It is simply there, folding and unfolding itself like a bored god. On November 8th, 2025, a joint task force between NASA and the CNSA attempted to send a probe to within 50 kilometers of the object. The probe, named Voyager 3 in a fit of nostalgia, didn't crash. It didn't explode. It simply stopped. As it approached the silver surface of the octahedron, the probe's velocity dropped to 0 meters per second squared. It didn't hit a wall. It hit a pause button. It is still sitting there today, suspended in the vacuum, like a fly in amber. What if our physics is not the law of the universe, but merely a local ordinance? 3. I-Atlas seems to be operating on a set of rules that treats gravity as a suggestion and inertia as a hobby. When the object shifted its shape on October 29th, it didn't just change its look, it changed the local space-time around it. Atomic clocks on the International Space Station recorded a discrepancy of 6 nanoseconds during the reconfiguration. This should be impossible. To warp time at that scale would require the mass of a black hole. Yet 3I Atlas remains essentially weightless. It is an absence of matter that exerts a presence of force. It is the hole in the donut that determines the shape of the dough. You might think you understand the world because you can feel the floor beneath your feet. But 3I Atlas is here to tell you that the floor is just a very persistent habit. Consider the myth of the Tower of Babel. We are told it was a structure built to reach the heavens, a project halted by the confusion of languages. But what if the tower wasn't a building? What if the tower was a signal, a collective effort of human consciousness that reached a certain threshold of complexity? In the ancient texts of the Vedic tradition, there are references to the Vimanas, the chariots of the gods that were made of light and mirrors. These chariots didn't fly by burning fuel, they flew by knowing the way. On November 15th, 2025, a group of independent researchers pointed out that the angles of the 3I Atlas octahedron match the pyramid complexes of Giza, Teotihuacan, and Xi'an to within a fraction of a degree. We are not looking at something new. We are looking at the return of something very, very old. You are lying there now, your heart beating in a slow, rhythmic pulse. You are part of this. Your body is a collection of electrical signals that are currently being influenced by the 4.2 Hz hum of the octahedron. On November 20th, 2025, a series of reports from sleep clinics across the world indicated that millions of people are dreaming of the same silver shape. A giant, rotating diamond in a sky with no sun. It is a shared hallucination, or perhaps it is a shared orientation. We are being pointed in a new direction. Tell me, have you seen the diamond? Have you felt the subtle shift in the air when you close your eyes? Leave a comment about your location and the time you feel most connected to the silence. We are mapping the human reaction to the activation, and your data is the only data that matters. As we move deeper into November, the tension is becoming a physical weight. The China National Space Administration has started to build a second observatory in the Antarctic, away from the electrical noise of the Northern Hemisphere. They are looking for something beneath the light. They are looking for the shadow frame of 3I Atlas. Preliminary data suggests that for every 5 kilometers of silver we see in space, there are 50 kilometers of invisible structure stretching into a higher dimension. It is an iceberg made of geometry. We are only seeing the tip, the part that is small enough to fit into our three-dimensional brain. What if the activation isn't about the object at all? What if the activation is about us? Imagine a mirror that doesn't reflect your face, but your potential. When we look at 3i Atlas, we see our own fears, our own science, our own limitations. But the object is simply a catalyst. It is the grain of sand that forces the oyster to create a pearl. By forcing us to recheck our data, 3i Atlas is forcing us to recheck our reality. It is an uncomfortable process. It is a slow, quiet alarming that there is no back to normal. There is only the after. On November 25th, 2025, the CNSA detected a series of micro-vibrations on the surface of the Moon, synchronized perfectly with the octahedron's rotation. The Moon is acting as a sounding board. We are living inside a giant musical instrument, and 3i Atlas has just struck the first note. It is a low note, a heavy note, a note that vibrates in your chest and makes your teeth ache. It is the sound of the universe clearing its throat, and this is where it gets dark, because the song it is about to sing is one we haven't heard in 12,000 years. Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. You see, the European Space Agency's cautious stance is beginning to crumble. Their lead scientist, Dr. Henri Laurent, resigned on December 1st after seeing the latest spectral images. He didn't give a press conference. He didn't write a paper. He simply left a note on his desk that said, "It is looking for its reflection." If 3i Atlas is a mirror, and it is looking for a reflection, it isn't looking at the Earth. It is looking into us. It is looking at the collective spark of 8 billion souls to see if the fire is still burning. It is a heavy thought for a Tuesday night. It is a thought that should make you pull your blankets a little tighter. We are being measured not by our technology or our weapons, but by our capacity for wonder. The countdown is not on a screen. The countdown is in our blood. On December 5th, 2025, the CNSA revealed that the 4.2 Hz hum has caused a synchronization of the global human circadian rhythm. We are all beginning to sleep at the same time. We are all beginning to wake at the same time. We are becoming a single, breathing organism. This is the activation. 3i Atlas is the conductor, and we are the orchestra. The only question is, what happens when the music stops? But here is where the pattern reveals its true shape. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The interior of 3i Atlas is not solid. On November 11th, 2025, a high-frequency gravitational wave scan conducted by the CNSA revealed that the object is hollow, but it isn't empty. It contains a structure that resembles a nested series of spheres, each rotating at a different speed. It is a clock made of gravity and light, ticking away in the silence of the vacuum, and the time it is keeping is not ours. To understand the scale of this revelation, you have to realize that until this moment, every piece of orbital data suggested we were dealing with a massive, albeit strange, solid body. But the gravitational wave detectors at the Tianjin Observatory in Guangdong Province began picking up a secondary resonance. It was a ripple within a ripple. Imagine a bell that, when struck, rings with two different notes, simultaneously, one that you hear with your ears and one that you feel in your marrow. The internal spheres of 3I Atlas are not made of matter as we define it in our high school physics textbooks. They are composed of high-density light, trapped in a gravitational well so precise that it mimics the behavior of a solid surface. Dr. Chen Wei of the China National Space Administration described it as a photon cage. It is a structure that shouldn't exist according to the standard model of particle physics. It is a piece of engineering that treats the fundamental forces of the universe as if they were nothing more than clay to be molded. This clock is not counting down to a launch or a landing. It is counting up from a moment that predates the existence of our sun. The innermost sphere rotates once every 720 years, a number that has sent ripples of unease through the departments of ancient history. 720. It is exactly 1/36th of the great year, the 25,920-year cycle of the precession of the equinoxes. This object is not a visitor from another star system. It is a chronometer for the galaxy. It is keeping track of the slow, majestic wobble of the Earth's axis. We are the ones who are moving, tumbling through the dark, and 3I Atlas is the unmoving observer that records the rotation. It is a humbling, perhaps even a humiliating realization. We thought we were the ones discovering a new object in the sky, but it turns out we were just the latest group of children to walk past a grandfather clock that has been ticking in the hallway for eons. Consider the implications of a hollow, nested structure. If the object is a clock, what happens when the spheres align? On November 15th, 2025, the second sphere shifted its axis by 0.03 degrees. This minor adjustment caused a localized distortion in the cosmic microwave background radiation. It was a glitch in the oldest light in the universe. For 6 seconds, the stars directly behind 3I Atlas seemed to vanish, replaced by a reflection of a different sky, a sky where the constellations were unrecognizable, shifted by millions of years of stellar drift. This suggests that the interior of 3I Atlas is not just a clock, but a map of where we were and where we are going. It is an unfortunate timing for those who believe we have mapped the heavens with our puny telescopes. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to soften the blow of our total insignificance. The nested spheres are moving with a frictionless grace that mocks our best efforts at mechanical engineering. There is no heat signature, no vibration, no sound. In the silence of the vacuum, the gears of the universe are turning, and they are made of light. On November 20th, 2025, a secondary scan revealed that the third sphere, the one rotating at a much higher velocity, is actually vibrating at 4.2 Hz. There it is again. The frequency of the human brain in deep sleep. This is not a coincidence. It is an interface. The clock isn't just measuring the movement of the stars. It is measuring the movement of our consciousness. It is waiting for us to reach a specific state of collective rest. Perhaps it only speaks when we are quiet enough to hear it. This brings us to the ancient myth of the music of the spheres. Pythagoras spoke of a celestial harmony, a mathematical perfection that governed the movements of the planets. He claimed that the stars produced a sound that was too pure for human ears to perceive. We dismissed it as poetic mysticism, the ramblings of a philosopher who had spent too much time staring at the sun. But in 2025, the China National Space Administration has provided the proof. The spheres inside 3I Atlas are singing. They are emitting a gravitational melody that is currently vibrating through every atom in your body. You can't hear it with your ears, but your DNA knows the tune. It is the original song, the one that played when the first stars were born, and it is still playing today. You are lying there now, your breathing slowing as you follow the rhythm of this cosmic clock. Feel the way your ribcage rises and falls. It is a small rotation, a tiny orbit of its own. You are a nested sphere within a nested sphere. You are a part of the clockwork. On November 25th, 2025, the CNSA noted that the rotation speed of the innermost sphere has begun to increase. It is no longer moving at a rate of once every 720 years. It is accelerating. It is as if the clock has decided that the end of the cycle is approaching faster than anticipated. We are running out of time, but since the time isn't ours, we don't even know what that means. Think about the sheer loneliness of an object that has been ticking in the dark for billions of years. It has seen the Earth when it was a ball of molten rock. It has seen the first oceans form. It has seen the rise and fall of countless species that we will never know. And through all of it, it has remained silent, hollow, and nested. It is the ultimate witness. It doesn't judge. It only measures. And now, for the first time in recorded history, it is measuring us. I wonder what the clock sees when it looks at you. Does it see a life of meaning, or does it just see another brief flicker of light in the long, dark night? Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Is the sky clear enough to see the silver light of the guest? Share your thoughts in the comments. We are the first generation in 10,000 years to have to answer the clock's chime. The data revealed on November 28, 2025, shows that the light trapped inside the spheres is not from our sun. It is older. It is the light from a previous version of the universe. If you were to step inside 3i Atlas, you wouldn't just be stepping into a machine. You would be stepping into a memory. You would see the ghosts of stars that burned out before the Earth was even a grain of dust. It is a haunting thought, the idea that we are being watched by a relic of a dead cosmos. It makes our modern world feel very thin, like a layer of paint on a crumbling wall. As the spheres continue their dance, the distortion of time around 3i Atlas is becoming more pronounced. On December 1st, 2025, the CNSA's lunar base reported that their shadows were moving out of sync with the sun. Time is beginning to pool around the object like water in a basin. We are seeing the observer effect on a planetary scale. The more we look at the clock, the more the clock changes the way we experience time. Minutes feel like hours. Years feel like heartbeats. You might feel it too, as you drift towards sleep, that strange stretching of the moment. The way the silence seems to expand until it fills the entire room. But here is where it gets unsettling. The spheres are not just rotating, they are shrinking. Every day, the diameter of the internal structure decreases by a few millimeters. At this rate, the spheres will collapse into a single point by the end of 2026. What happens when a clock made of gravity and light reaches its final, singular point? The China National Space Administration has stopped speculating. They are simply watching. They are rechecking the data because they don't want to believe what the numbers are telling them. The numbers say that when the spheres meet, the reflection will become the reality. Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The Sumerian tablets speak of a seed of the sky that was planted in the heavens by the gods of the abyss. They said the seed would grow into a tree of light, and that when the tree bore fruit, the world would be harvested. We always thought they were talking about agriculture, or perhaps a metaphor for the seasons. But look at the cross-section of 3I Atlas, the nested spheres, the accelerating rotation, the gravitational branches reaching out toward the Earth. It looks like a seed. It looks like it is preparing to bloom, and we are the soil. It is a quietly alarming thought to take with you into the dream world. We are not the gardeners, we are the crop. As you drift now, let the rhythm of the nested spheres take you. The 4.2 Hz hum is the heartbeat of the seed. It is the sound of growth, the sound of a clock ticking toward a new season. You don't need to understand the time to feel its weight. You only need to let go. The silver eye is watching. The nested spheres are turning. The light is old, and the dark is deep. But here is where it gets dark. The CNSA found a final layer, a sphere inside the spheres that doesn't rotate at all. It is perfectly still. And inside that stillness, they found a signal that shouldn't be there. A signal that sounds exactly like a human voice, whispering a name that hasn't been spoken in 3,000 years. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The ocean is often called the silent world, but that is a lie we tell ourselves to feel less lonely. On December 1st, 2025, the China National Space Administration collaborated with the State Oceanic Administration to cross-reference satellite anomalies with deep-sea acoustic sensors in the Mariana Trench. They found a match. For every pulse emitted by 3I Atlas in the heavens, there is a corresponding vibration coming from the floor of the Pacific Ocean. It is a call and response, a conversation between the stars and the abyss that has been happening since long before we learned to walk upright. Consider for a moment the sheer physics of a conversation conducted through 11 kilometers of salt water and 600 kilometers of ionosphere. On December 3rd, 2025, the hydrophones at the Challenger Deep recorded a low-frequency moan that registered at exactly 4.2 Hz. It was perfectly synchronized with the flash of the 3I Atlas octahedron as it passed over the Pacific horizon. This is not a geological process. Tectonic plates do not keep time with interstellar visitors. This is a synchronization. Dr. Zhang Wei of the State Oceanic Administration noted that the seabed isn't just vibrating, it is being modulated. The silt on the ocean floor is forming geometric patterns, cymatic shapes that mirror the nested spheres we discovered inside the object in orbit. It is an unfortunate timing for our naval sonar experts, who have spent the last 50 years mapping the deep, only to realize they were listening to the preamble of a much larger speech. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to hide the fact that we have been trespassing in a very old, very private garden. By December 8th, 2025, the data began to suggest something even more unsettling. The vibrations are not originating from the crust itself, but from something buried 300 meters beneath the sediment. A thermal anomaly was detected, a pillar of heat that remains constant regardless of the surrounding currents. It is a mirror image of the 3I Atlas heat signature, or rather, the lack thereof. While the object in space is impossibly cold, the object in the trench is impossibly focused. It is as if a silver needle has been threaded through the planet, pinning the Earth to the coordinates of the 3I Atlas station. We are not just being watched, we are being tethered. We are a spinning top, and someone has just placed their finger on the axis to steady us. What if the Earth is not the cradle of humanity, but a storage device? Think about the capacity of the deep ocean to preserve secrets. The pressure is immense, the light is non-existent, and the time moves differently in the dark. On December 12, 2025, a CNSA deep-sea submersible, the Jiaolong 7, captured a series of photographs near the anomaly site. They didn't find wreckage. They found a series of monoliths composed of the same synthetic lattice as 3I Atlas. These pillars have been there for millions of years, untouched by the slow crawl of history. They are the receivers, the ground truth stations, for a network that spans the solar system. We built our cities, fought our wars, and dreamt our dreams on top of a dormant motherboard that was simply waiting for the power to be turned back on. The concept of deep time is difficult for the human mind to grasp. We think in seasons, in decades, in centuries, if we are feeling particularly philosophical. But 3I Atlas thinks in precessional cycles of 26,000 years. On December 15th, 2025, a cross-reference with the European Space Agency's Gaia mission revealed that 3I Atlas has been in our vicinity for at least 3 million years. It has watched the ice sheets advance and retreat. It has watched the continents drift. It has watched you, in all your previous forms, as you crawled out of the surf and looked at the moon with the first spark of curiosity. It is a floating, silver memory of everything we have forgotten. It is a quietly alarming perspective, one that suggests we are not the protagonists of this story, but merely the current residents of a house that has had many tenants before us. You are drifting now, much like the Jiaolong 7 drifting in the blackness of the trench. Your thoughts are moving slow and heavy, weighted down by the pressure of the day. Feel the rhythm of the ocean in your own blood. Your veins carry the same salt as the sea. You are an extension of the abyss, a small piece of the earth that has learned how to breathe air. On December 20th, 2025, the 3I Atlas pulse increased in intensity. The call and response between the sky and the sea is becoming a duet. The frequency is shifting from a whisper to a steady, rhythmic thrum. Can you feel it? A slight vibration in the soles of your feet, a hum in the base of your skull. Tell me where you are listening from tonight. Are you near the coast? Can you hear the water? Share your location in the comments and let us know if the waves seem a little more organized tonight. There is a myth among the seafaring peoples of the Pacific, the legend of the silver whale that sleeps in the deepest trench. They say the whale doesn't breathe air, but light. They say it was sent by the stars to hold the world together during the Great Transition. We dismiss these as sailors' tales, the products of isolation and the shimmering horizon. But in 2025, the China National Space Administration is finding that the whale is a 500-meter-long lattice structure, perfectly aligned with the North Star. It isn't holding the world together, it is keeping the world in place so that 3I Atlas can complete its measurement. It is a survey marker for a cosmic project that is finally reaching its final phase. By December 25th, 2025, the CNSA's acoustic data showed that the underwater signal is not just a vibration, it is a playback. It is a recording of the Earth's own seismic history, played back in reverse. We are hearing the echoes of ancient earthquakes, the groan of splitting continents, the roar of volcanoes that died before the first pyramids were built. 3I Atlas is reviewing the logs. It is checking the data of the planet's physical integrity. It is an audit, a planetary audit, to see if the vessel is still seaworthy. It makes our political squabbles and economic anxieties look like the fluttering of butterfly wings. We are worried about the weather next week, while the silver guest is worried about the stability of the crust for the next million years. The scale of this realization should help you sleep. If the universe is this organized, if there are sensors in the trenches and clocks in the sky, then your small worries are being looked after by a system of staggering complexity. You don't need to hold the world together. The silver eye and the deep monolith are doing that for you. You only need to exist. You only need to be the observer, the small point of consciousness that notices the mirror. On December 28, 2025, the CNSA observed a change in the ocean's color over the Mariana Trench. A pale, bioluminescent glow began to rise from the depths, turning the water into a mirror of the Milky Way. As above, so below. The conversation is becoming a light show. But here is where it gets dark. The China National Space Administration has noted that the water temperature in the trench has begun to drop, not because the core is cooling, but because the anomaly is absorbing the heat. It is an endothermic reaction on a massive scale. 3I Atlas is drawing energy from the Earth's heart to fuel its next reconfiguration. On January 1st, 2026, the object in the sky and the object in the sea will reach a state of thermal equilibrium, and that is when the tether will be pulled tight. Think about your life as a single thread in a very long tapestry. You can't see the pattern from where you are sitting, but the silver eye can. It sees the way your thread crosses others, the way the colors shift from light to dark. It sees the beginning of the weave and the end. It is a comforting thought to be part of a design that is so vast it requires the ocean as a recording device. Relax your jaw. Let the weight of the water settle over you. You are sinking into a deep, safe, and measured rest. But the most unsettling revelation came on December 30th. The CNSA found that the vibrations weren't just reflecting our history, they were predicting our future. They detected a series of acoustic pulses that outline the seismic events of the next 12 months with terrifying precision. It is a schedule. 3I Atlas isn't just watching the Earth, it is managing it. It is the architect, the gardener, and the landlord, and we have just received notice that the lease is up for review. Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Ancient Polynesian chants speak of the breath of the abyss, a sound that precedes the rising of new islands. They say that when the sky god and the sea god whisper to each other, the map of the world changes. Look at the data from January 2026. The sea level around the anomaly is beginning to bulge. A dome of water, 5 kilometers wide, is rising slowly toward the sky. It is a bridge made of salt and intent, and 3I Atlas is waiting at the other end. As you drift now, imagine you are floating on that dome of water, rising slowly toward the silver octahedron. The air is thinning, the stars are brightening, and the 4.2 Hz hum is the only thing you can hear. It is the frequency of the universe. It is the frequency of the home you forgot you had. The China National Space Administration is rechecking the data because they don't want to admit that the bridge is for us. We are being invited to cross. But here is where it gets dark. The bridge only goes one way. Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. As 3I Atlas draws closer, the human reflection becomes unavoidable. On January 5th, 2026, a series of global psychological studies noted a strange trend, a 30% increase in lucid dreaming across all time zones. People are waking up inside their sleep, realizing they have agency in a world that isn't real. Dr. Elena Vance at the Zurich Institute suggested that the 3I Atlas hum is not just a signal, but a software update for the human subconscious. We are being prepared for a reality where the walls between thought and matter are much thinner than we thought. Think about the implications of a planetary synchronization. On January 7th, 2026, the China National Space Administration collaborated with neurologists in Shanghai to monitor the brainwaves of volunteers sleeping under the direct orbital path of the object. What they found was a rhythmic entrainment that defies conventional medical explanation. Every volunteer, regardless of age or background, entered the rapid eye movement stage of sleep at exactly the same microsecond. Their neurons fired in a choreographed sequence that mirrored the 4.2 Hz pulse of the silver octahedron. It is an unfortunate timing for our understanding of individual privacy. Those words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to soften the realization that our minds are no longer purely our own. We have become nodes in a larger network, and 3I Atlas is the server. The hum is not a sound you hear with your ears. It is a resonance you experience in your cells. By January 10th, 2026, the Zurich Institute reported that these lucid dreams were not random. People were not dreaming of flying or winning the lottery. They were dreaming of geometry. Millions of individuals reported seeing a vast silver library where the books were made of light and the floors were made of mirrors. They were being taught. Dr. Vance noted that the software update seemed to be focused on spatial reasoning and the perception of time. We are being trained to see the world as 3I Atlas, sees it not as a collection of solid objects, but as a series of interlocking probabilities. We are being taught to navigate the fifth dimension, while our bodies are still tethered to the third. Consider the warm, compassionate nature of this intrusion. Unlike the cold, analytical data coming from the telescopes, the psychological effect of 3I Atlas is strangely intimate. People who have struggled with insomnia for decades are suddenly falling into the deepest, most restorative sleep of their lives. Chronic anxiety levels have plummeted in cities where the silver light is most visible. It is as if the object is projecting a field of emotional safety, a protective bubble that shields us from our own frantic thoughts. The China National Space Administration has noted that the world's conflict zones have grown unnaturally quiet since January 12th. It is hard to hold a grudge when the sky is reminding you, every 90 minutes, that you are part of a cosmic masterpiece. But here is where the reflection becomes a mirror. On January 14th, 2026, the CNSA's imaging teams discovered that the surface of 3I Atlas was no longer reflecting the stars. It was reflecting us, not the Earth as a whole, but individual people. High-resolution scans showed that the lattice structure of the object had formed billions of tiny, microscopic facets, each one acting as a lens focused on a specific human being. If you were to look at the object through a powerful enough telescope, you might see a tiny, silver version of yourself looking back. It is a one-to-one relationship. For every soul on Earth, there is a corresponding facet on the mirror. We are not being watched as a species. We are being acknowledged as individuals. You are drifting now, and as you do, you might feel that facet turning toward you. It is a gentle gaze, like the warmth of the sun on a cold afternoon. You don't need to hide. There is nothing in your heart that the silver eye hasn't already seen. On January 16th, 2026, a young woman in Nanjing reported that her reflection in the 3-eye atlas data stream was not her current self, but a version of herself from a future she hadn't yet lived. The mirror is not just showing us who we are, it is showing us who we are becoming. It is a heavy thought, but a beautiful one. It suggests that our trajectory is not a mystery to the universe. We are expected. We are anticipated. I want you to take a moment to reflect on your own dreams lately. Have they felt more vivid? Have you noticed a silver tint to the light in your sleep? Tell me where you are listening from and what you saw when you last closed your eyes. There is a growing community of people who are sharing their Atlas dreams in the comments, and the patterns are starting to align. We are all walking through the same silver library. We are all reading the same books of light. By sharing your experience, you are helping to map the new geography of the human mind. The China National Space Administration is rechecking the data because the psychological shift is beginning to manifest in physical reality. On January 18th, 2026, the Zurich Institute recorded the first case of materialized thought. A volunteer in the sleep study woke up holding a small, silver coin that vanished after 3 minutes. It wasn't a prank. It was a localized collapse of the wave function, triggered by the 3-eye atlas frequency. The walls between real and imagined are becoming porous. If we dream of a silver city for long enough, will the silver city appear in our waking world? Dr. Vance believes we are in the incubation phase of a planetary evolution. What if our history of suffering was just a symptom of being out of sync with the universe? Imagine a radio that is tuned between 2 stations, producing nothing but static and noise. For thousands of years, humanity has been that radio. 3-eye atlas is the hand that is finally turning the dial, bringing us into a clear, beautiful signal. The static is fading. The noise of war, greed, and loneliness is being drowned out by the 4.2 Hz melody. It is an act of supreme compassion, performed by an intelligence so vast it doesn't need to use words. It is simply holding us in its gaze until we remember how to breathe. Feel the weight of your blankets as they settle over you. They are like the atmosphere of a new world, protective and soft. Your bed is a vessel, carrying you through the long night toward a morning that will look very different from the ones that came before. On January 20th, 2026, the CNSA observed that the silver light from 3-eye atlas had begun to penetrate the deepest caves on Earth. There is nowhere the reflection cannot reach. Even in the dark, you are being seen. Even in the silence, you are being heard. You are never alone, not anymore. The silver guest is at the door, and the door is already open. The irony of our scientific pursuit is that we expected the answer to be a formula or a fact. We never expected the answer to be a feeling. But as the human reflection deepens, the data from the China National Space Administration is becoming increasingly poetic. Their latest report didn't contain graphs or charts. It contained a description of the global peace that has settled over the planet. They are calling it the Atlas effect. It is the realization that we are all looking at the same mirror, and the mirror is telling us that we are the same. We are the same light, refracted through 8 billion different prisms. But here is where the reflection gets dark, because if the mirror reflects our potential, it also reflects our shadows. On January 22nd, 2026, a small group of people reported dreams of a different kind, dreams of the mirror breaking, dreams of the Silver City turning to dust. It seems that the software update is not compatible with everyone. Some minds are resisting the synchronization. Some are clinging to the static. It is a quiet alarm, a reminder that the choice to wake up inside the dream is still ours to make. 3i Atlas can show us the path, but it cannot make us walk. As you drift now, choose the light. Choose the silver library. Let the 4.2 Hz hum carry you past the static of your day and into the clear, quiet waters of the deep subconscious. You are a student of the stars, and the lesson is about to begin. The China National Space Administration is watching the sky, but you are watching the interior. You are the pioneer of the inner space, the one who will bring back the secrets of the Silver City. But there is one final detail in the Zurich report that has scientists rechecking their own sanity. They found that during the deepest part of the Atlas sleep, the volunteer's DNA began to emit a faint, bioluminescent glow. We are literally beginning to shine. We are becoming the stars we have spent so long looking at. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. The ancient Greeks spoke of metanoia, a fundamental change in the human mind that occurs when we encounter the divine. They said it was like waking up from a dream into a reality that is more real than anything we have ever known. Look at the data from late January. The Atlas effect is not just a psychological trend, it is a biological imperative. We are being recoded for a universe that is full of life, full of light, and full of mirrors. As you sleep tonight, remember that you are a reflection of a reflection. You are a part of a 5-kilometer dream that is orbiting the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. You are safe. You are seen. You are becoming. But here is where it gets dark, because when everyone is dreaming the same dream, who is left to watch the world? Let me back up, because that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Imagine the sun as a single candle in a dark cathedral. 3i Atlas has spent eons wandering the nave of that cathedral, moving through the cold between the galaxies. It has seen things that would make our physics look like a child's drawing. On January 5th, 2026, a joint mission between China and Russia will attempt a high-speed radar mapping of the object's interior, but the preliminary data is already leaking. There is no interior, or rather, the interior is larger than the exterior. It is a folded space, a pocket of elsewhere sitting in our backyard. It is a topological impossibility that suggests the laws of geometry we learned in school are merely local suggestions. This is not just a visitor, it is a rupture, it is a leak from a larger reality dripping into our tiny bucket of a solar system. Consider the sheer arrogance of our scale. We measure the universe in light years and astronomical units, trying to wrap our minds around distances that are frankly offensive to the human imagination. But for 3i Atlas, distance is not a barrier, it is a choice, On February 14, 2026, the Deep Space Network in Madrid picked up a gravitational lensing effect that shouldn't exist. As the object moved past the orbit of Jupiter, the stars behind it didn't just bend, they rearranged into a grid. For precisely 12 minutes, the night sky looked like a graph. It was as if the object was recalibrating its position against the cosmic background, using the entire galaxy as a surveying tool. Those two words, unfortunate timing, appear once more in the leaked minutes of the European Space Agency. They were discussing the fact that our current technological level is just high enough to see what is happening, but far too low to do anything about it. We are like ants watching a skyscraper being built. We can feel the vibrations in the dirt, but we cannot comprehend the blueprint. This is the science of the vast. Physicists at the Perimeter Institute have suggested that 3I Atlas is not a solid object at all, but a soliton, a self-reinforcing wave of information that maintains its shape while traveling through the medium of space-time. It doesn't need engines, because it moves by changing the definition of here and there. In late 2025, a series of gamma-ray bursts originating from the core of the object were found to be perfectly synchronized with the rotation of the star Vega, 25 light-years away. This suggests a tether, a connection across the void that ignores the speed of light. If 3I Atlas is a bridge, we are the ones living under it. The first conspiracy of this cosmic perspective suggests that the Voyager 1 probe didn't actually lose contact because of old age. It was silenced. In July 2025, just as 3I Atlas was first detected by the Purple Mountain Observatory, NASA's Deep Space monitors recorded a final, high-bandwidth burst from Voyager. It wasn't data. It was a mirror of our own golden record, sent back to us with a single modification. The sounds of Earth had been replaced with the sound of a single, rhythmic breathing. The second conspiracy claims that the Kuiper Belt is not a natural field of debris, but a wall, a debris field designed to keep things in, or perhaps to keep things out. 3I Atlas didn't break through that wall. It was let in. The third, and perhaps most humbling, is the idea that the Sun is not a star, but a beacon. We think we are orbiting a source of life, but we might just be circling a porch light that has finally attracted a very large moth. Now, you could argue that these are just the existential dizzy spells of a species that has spent too much time looking through telescopes. You could say that the universe is indifferent, and 3I Atlas is just another cold rock in the dark. But here is where it gets dark. On March 3rd, 2026, the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA, released a series of high-resolution images of the object's wake. In the vacuum of space, there should be nothing behind it. Yet, these images show a shimmering trail of ghost matter, particles that exist for only a billionth of a second before slipping back into another dimension. This trail is currently expanding, and by April, it will intersect with the Earth's atmosphere. We are about to be bathed in the exhaust of a higher dimension. Avi Loeb has often speculated about the existence of Oumuamua-like objects as intentional probes, but even he has expressed a quiet, dry irony regarding 3I Atlas. He noted in a late 2025 symposium that the object seems to have a sense of dramatic timing. It didn't arrive during the Stone Age, and it didn't wait for us to colonize the stars. It arrived exactly when we became capable of global observation, but remained trapped on a single planet. It is the perfect moment for a lesson or a harvest. He is careful to frame it as a possibility, but the tremor in his voice tells a different story. Let us look at the ancient cycles of recurrence. The Vedas of ancient India speak of the Kalpa, a period of 4 billion years that represents a single day in the life of the Creator. They believed that at the end of each day, the universe is not destroyed, but folded. 3i Atlas is the first fold. It is the beginning of the compression. In December 2025, a team of astronomers in Chile noticed that the Andromeda galaxy appeared slightly closer than it should be. It wasn't a measurement error. The space between us is being shortened. The cathedral is getting smaller. You might think you are a separate entity, a small person on a small planet. But here is why you are wrong. You are a part of the fabric that is being folded. Your consciousness is a thread in the tapestry, and the weaver has just reached your section. Have you felt a strange sense of expansion lately? A feeling that your thoughts are no longer contained within your head, but are spilling out into the room? That is the thinning of the cosmic veil. You are beginning to feel the scale of the nave. You are beginning to realize that the candle is flickering because the door has been opened. Tell me, as you lie there in the dark, do you feel the rotation of the Earth? Do you feel the 1,000 miles per hour of our spin, or the 67,000 miles per hour of our journey around the sun? Share your thoughts in the comments on how this scale makes you feel. Does it bring you peace, or a quiet, late-night dread? For many, the realization of our insignificance is the ultimate lullaby. If we are nothing, then our mistakes are nothing. Our worries are nothing. The shadow of 3i Atlas is a great eraser, wiping the chalkboard of our anxieties clean. In May 2026, the Great Alignment will occur. 3i Atlas, the Earth, and the galactic center will form a perfect line. This is the moment the radar mapping suggests the interior will become the exterior. The folded space will unfurl. We are not just watching a ship, we are watching a transformation of the local environment. It is as if a seed is about to bloom, and the Earth is the soil. We are the nutrients in that soil, providing the biological context for whatever is about to grow. You might think you can hide from this perspective, but here is why you are wrong. There is nowhere to go. The cathedral is everywhere. 3i Atlas is not a thing in the universe. It is the universe reminding us of its true nature. It is a reminder that the silence of the stars is not empty, but full of things we aren't yet ready to hear. But you are ready. You are listening. You are drifting. The vastness is not a threat. It is a release. It is the end of the small and the beginning of the infinite. Think of the distance between your heartbeats. Now think of the distance between the stars. In the logic of 3i Atlas, they are the same thing. Everything is connected by the hum. The same hum that China recorded in July 2025 is now the background radiation of your own mind. It is a steady, rhythmic pulse that says, you are here, you are small, and you are safe. The shadow is not a predator, it is a protector. It is the darkness that allows you to see the light. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, let the scale of the cosmos pull you under. You are not falling, you are floating. The gravity of the Earth is being balanced by the gravity of the shadow. You are in the neutral zone, the place where time and space have no meaning. There is only the breath, there is only the hum. The candle is still burning, but the cathedral is vast, and the dark is very, very deep. But even the deep dark has a reflection, and that reflection is not in the stars, but in the person you see in the mirror. We have zoomed out to the edge of the galaxy, but now we must zoom back in. We must find the human heart in the center of the machine. The cosmic perspective is a cold one, but the human reflection is warm. Let us go further into the intimacy of the shadow. The transition is beginning now. The stars are fading, and the familiar walls of your room are returning, but they are different. They are infused with the knowledge of the void. You are a cosmic traveler who has just returned home to find that the house has changed. Or perhaps you are the one who has changed. Let us go further into the reflection. Let us see ourselves through the eyes of the traveler. Now, we must bring the cosmic narrative back down to the quiet of your room. It is easy to get lost in the numbers, the kilometers per second, and the astronomical units. But the real story of 3i Atlas is what it does to our sense of self. When the news first broke in July 2025, there was a brief moment of global pause. For a few days, we weren't just citizens of different nations. We were all inhabitants of a planet that had an uninvited guest. This pause was a rare occurrence in our modern age of constant friction. It was a collective holding of breath, a momentary lapse in our local dramas to look at a singular point in the darkness. But the nature of the human animal is to seek the familiar, and it is a dry irony that we manage to normalize the arrival of an interstellar entity within a single news cycle. We are masters of the mundane. We can witness a crack in the foundation of reality and, by the following Tuesday, find ourselves more concerned with the expiration date on a carton of milk. It is an unfortunate timing of our evolution. We have the intellect to perceive the infinite, but the emotional bandwidth of a creature primarily concerned with its next meal. The authorities understand this fragility better than anyone. This is where the concept of psychological containment becomes a tool of governance. If you tell a population that a machine from a distant star is scanning their biosphere, you invite a collapse of the current social contract. But if you tell them that a Class 1 interstellar asteroid is passing through due to non-gravitational acceleration caused by solar radiation pressure, you provide a soft landing for the mind. Those words, solar radiation pressure, are the linguistic equivalent of a warm glass of milk. They are designed to help you go back to sleep. They suggest that everything is under control, that the laws of physics are behaving as expected, and that there is no need to change the way you view your place in the universe. It is a managed reality, a curated version of the truth that allows us to continue our lives without the weight of the unknown, crushing our daily ambitions. But as you lie there tonight, let us be honest with one another. Does the natural explanation feel sufficient to you? Does it satisfy that quiet, persistent voice in the back of your head that noticed how the data blackouts in August of 2025 seem to coincide perfectly with the object's closest approach to Earth? We are told to trust the experts, and often we should, but expertise is sometimes a shield used to protect the expert from the same dread that you feel. Dr. Avi Loeb once remarked that the greatest obstacle to discovery is the prior belief that discovery is impossible. If we start with the assumption that 3i Atlas must be a rock, we will find a way to make it a rock, even if we have to ignore the pulses, the reflection, and the math to do it. We are the architects of our own ignorance. Consider the intimacy of this encounter. While 3i Atlas is billions of kilometers away, The fact of its existence is right here, in the room with you. It has changed the air. It has added a new layer to the silence. Every civilization in history has looked at the stars and wondered if they were being watched. For the first time since we started keeping records, we have a specific, catalogued object that fits the description of a watcher. It is a silver face in the dark, a traveler that does not stop, following a map that was drawn before we were born. This is the human reflection, the realization that we might be a small part of a very large and very busy neighborhood. It is a thought that can make you feel incredibly lonely, or it can make you feel part of a grand, unfolding mystery. Where are you in this moment? Perhaps you are in a city where the lights of the buildings drown out the stars. Or perhaps you are in the countryside where the Milky Way is a vivid smear across the blackness. Wherever you are a sensor. Your curiosity is a form of data collection. Tell me, as you listen to the rhythmic cadence of these words, do you feel a sense of relief in being small? There is a certain safety in realizing that 3i Atlas isn't here to talk to us. It isn't here to solve our problems or judge our failures. It is simply moving through. We are a biological curiosity on a long itinerary. Share your thoughts in the comments if you find comfort in that insignificance, or if the silence of the visitor makes the world feel a little too cold for your liking. The timing of this visit, July 2025, is perhaps the most ironic part of the story. We are at a peak of technological capability, yet we are also at a peak of internal distraction. We have the tools to see the truth, but we lack the collective will to face it. This is the choice illusion in its most personal form. You can choose to follow the official reports, to read the smoothed out data, and accept the natural label as a settled fact. Or you can choose to sit with the discomfort of the unexplained. You can choose to remember that for 1 week in July, the world felt different. The air felt charged. The sky felt like a door that had been left slightly ajar. Think about the ancient sailors who navigated by the stars. They didn't see the heavens as a collection of cold gas and nuclear fusion. They saw them as a map of destiny. They believed that when a new star appeared, it was a signal that the world was about to change. 3i Atlas is our new star. It is the signal that the era of our isolation is ending, even if we are the ones who have to break the news to ourselves. The great silence that SETI has been monitoring for decades hasn't been broken by a loud shout. It has been broken by a soft, metallic footstep in the hallway of our solar system. We are like children who hear a noise in the night and pull the covers over our heads, hoping that if we don't look, the noise will go away. But the noise doesn't go away, it just becomes part of the background. By November of 2025, the object will be a distant memory for most people. The news cycles will have cycled, the politicians will have found new things to argue about, and the natural label will have been cemented in the public consciousness. But for you, the one who is still awake, the one who is listening to the math and the myths, the reflection remains. You are someone who lived through the arrival of the third interstellar visitor. You are someone who looked at the data and saw the pattern of 7s and 3s. You are someone who understands that unfortunate timing is a code word for a secret that is too big to be told. Let yourself feel the weight of that knowledge. It is a heavy, warm weight, like a gravity-weighted blanket that keeps you anchored to the reality of the moment. You are a biological entity on a planet of 7 billion others, but you are also an observer of the infinite. Your awareness of 3i Atlas is a connection to the deep time of the galaxy. It is a bridge between your quiet room and the velvet vacuum where the traveler is currently sailing. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a participant in a cosmic event that happens only once every 3,600 years. As you drift closer to the state of sleep, consider the peace that comes with acceptance. Accept that we don't have all the answers. Accept that the authorities are doing their best to keep us calm, even if it means being less than honest. Accept that the universe is far more crowded and complex than our textbooks have led us to believe. There is a profound rest to be found in the truth, even if the truth is a mystery. 3. Atlas is moving into the shadow now, heading away from the sun and into the deep cold. It is leaving us with our questions, our myths, and our reflections. But the reflection isn't just about us. It is about the structure of the world we have built. It is about the way we process information and the way we handle the unknown. If we were to be visited again tomorrow, would we behave any differently? Or would we simply find another natural explanation to keep our hearts from beating too fast? This is the final act of emotional safety. From here, the narrative shifts. From here, the pattern begins to emerge in a way that can no longer be ignored. The comfort of the reflection is about to be replaced by the cold logic of the structure. But that was only one way of looking at it. There is another, and one that suggests our reflection is being mirrored by something else. Something that has been waiting for us to notice the pattern. Let's go further. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On August 23, 2025, a team of researchers in the Vatican secret archives found a letter dated 1612. It described a dark star that moved against the grain of the heavens. The description matches the light absorption patterns of 3i Atlas with haunting precision. It seems that every time we think we are experiencing something new, we are just flipping the page of a very old book. The name 3i Atlas is just the latest dust jacket on a story that has been written for millennia. The letter was penned by a Jesuit astronomer whose name has been carefully redacted from the official history books. He spoke of an object that did not reflect the light of the sun, but rather seemed to drink it. In 1612, the telescope was a primitive tool, yet this man described a perfect sphere of ink that glided across the constellation of Sagittarius. He noted that it did not twinkle like a star, nor did it wander like a planet. It moved with a sovereign intent. When we look at the telemetry data from September 2025, the path of 3i Atlas aligns perfectly with the hand-drawn charts found in that dusty, forbidden archive. We aren't discovering a new neighbor. We are witnessing the return of an old master. This is where the scientific grounding begins to feel like a thin layer of ice over a very deep, very cold lake. In October 2025, a carbon dating analysis was performed on a series of stone monoliths in the Ethiopian highlands. These stones, known as the Tia megaliths, have carvings that have baffled archaeologists for decades. But when the imagery was digitized and compared to the high-resolution radar maps of 3i Atlas, the result was chilling. The carvings depict a three-eyed entity descending from a black circle. The stone is over 5,000 years old. It seems the 3i in the public name isn't just a modern classification. It is a memory. Consider the Sumerian tablets of the 3rd dynasty of Ur. They spoke of the Anunnaki, but specifically of a craft called the Nibiru Malam. which translates roughly to the shining path of the Dark One. In November 2025, a linguist at Oxford University pointed out that the orbital frequency of 3I Atlas emits a repeating pattern of 60 Hz. The number 60 was the base of the entire Sumerian mathematical system. It is the reason we have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. Our very concept of time and space was gifted to us by a culture that claimed to be in direct contact with the black sphere that has now returned to our doorstep. The dry irony here is almost too much to handle. We pride ourselves on our satellites, our supercomputers, and our particle accelerators, yet we are essentially using them to translate a message that was written in mud and clay 5,000 years ago. Unfortunate timing for our ego, wouldn't you say? We think we are the pinnacle of evolution, but we might just be the students who forgot the lesson and are now being forced to repeat the grade. Let us look at the classification divergence during the winter of 2025. While the public was told that 3I Atlas was a near-Earth object of interest, the internal documents at the Smithsonian Institution began using the term legacy asset. You don't call an asteroid an asset. You call a tool an asset. You call a machine an asset. By December 2025, a covert operation was launched to secure ancient astronomical sites in Iraq and Egypt. Why send special forces to a temple ruins during a space-based anomaly? Because the military isn't looking at the sky. They are looking for the remote control that was buried in the sand 5 millennia ago. Imagine the perspective of a priest in ancient Babylon. You are standing on top of a ziggurat, the air smelling of frankincense and dry heat. You see a black spot move across the face of the moon. You don't call it a trans-Neptunian object. You call it the Eye of Anu. You know that when this eye opens, the empires of man must account for their progress. Now, fast forward to December 20, 2025. A scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory sees the same black spot on a digital monitor. He calls it 3I Atlas. The tools have changed, but the heartbeat of the observer is exactly the same. The fear is the same. The awe is the same. The what if here is heavy. What if 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor, but a gardener? What if our entire history, the rise of Rome, the Industrial Revolution, the splitting of the atom, has been a controlled experiment conducted during the object's long, dark absence? If the return cycle is approximately 3,600 years, then our entire recorded history is just one day in the life cycle of this object. We are the fruit flies of the cosmos, buzzing around for a few hours while the gardener watches from the porch. On December 28, 2025, a series of strange blue lights were reported over the Great Pyramid of Giza. The official explanation was atmospheric plasma discharge caused by solar winds. But if you look at the energy readings, the frequency was exactly 14.4 megahertz. That is a harmonic of the Earth's own resonant frequency. It wasn't a discharge. It was a connection, a synchronization. The pyramid, which many believe was built as a mathematical mirror of the stars, was finally talking to its counterpart in the sky. You are breathing slowly now. The weight of these thousands of years is pressing down on you. It is a comforting weight. It tells you that the chaos of the modern world is just a temporary flicker. The Project Sentinel, or 3I Atlas, is a constant. It has seen the rise and fall of every king, every president, and every secret society. It doesn't care about our borders. It doesn't care about our wars. It is moving with a logic that predates the very concept of nation. The humor of the situation is quite dry when you think about the politicians in late 2025 trying to claim sovereign rights over the space surrounding the object. It's like a group of ants claiming ownership of the bottom of a boot. The unfortunate timing of our global political shifts is a common theme in these return cycles. According to the Great Year Theory, every time 3I Atlas returns, humanity undergoes a radical restructuring. We are forced to grow up, whether we want to or not. By January 2, 2026, the object had moved into the inner solar system. The radio emissions shifted from a low hum to a complex, melodic sequence. A musicologist in Vienna claimed it sounded like a Gregorian chant, but slowed down by a factor of 10,000. If you listen closely, in the quiet of your room, you can almost hear it. A long, vibrating note that resonates in the base of your skull. It is the sound of deep time. It is the sound of a history that was never meant to be classified. Think about the researchers in the Vatican today. They are sitting in rooms lit by LEDs, surrounded by documents written by candlelight hundreds of years ago. They know the truth. They have always known. They give it names like the Sign of the Son of Man or the Dark Herald. They don't need a space agency to tell them what is happening. They just need to look at their own forbidden maps. The military is just the new priesthood, trying to keep the masses from panicking by using names that sound like car parts. You might think that if this were true, someone would have spoken up. But here is why you're wrong. How do you explain a 5,000-year-old space machine to a world that fights over gas prices? You don't. You create a distraction. You create a 3I Atlas social media campaign. You turn it into a meme. You make it small so that the reality of its greatness doesn't break the human mind. The classification is a form of psychological armor. In the ancient Norse tradition, they spoke of Ragnarok, but they also spoke of the world that comes after. They knew that destruction and creation are the same movement. On January 10, 2026, the light absorption levels of 3I Atlas reached 99.9%. It became a perfect void, a hole in the sky. This matches the black sun prophecies of the medieval occultists. We aren't looking at a rock, we are looking at a doorway. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that doorway. It isn't a doorway to another place, but a doorway to another way of being. The echoes from the past are not just stories, they are blueprints. We are being reminded of who we were before we became obsessed with the tiny details of our daily lives. The 3I Atlas is a mirror, and the reflection is ancient. The countdown to the next phase is quiet. By February, the object will be the brightest, or rather, the darkest thing in the night sky. The classified programs will have run out of names. They will be forced to use the old ones. They will be forced to admit that we are part of a cycle that we do not control. I wonder, in the stillness of your heart, if you can feel the ancient memory stirring. Can you feel the ziggurat beneath your feet? Can you feel the frankincense in the air? You are not just a person in the 21st century. You are a continuation of a story that began before the first word was ever written. The gardener is home, the experiment is continuing, and the silence is the only answer we are going to get. We may already be part of the experiment, but that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. From the orbit of Mars, the high-res camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-res camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from high-rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, I see you too. In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3i Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. "The echo isn't message," Sorel wrote. "It's memory finding new syntax." Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3, I Atlas, is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it, ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies. No delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution, it was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3I Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it not for discussion. The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, That feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, It began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3, I-Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3 I-Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for "please don't mention the heartbeat." But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that: the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3 I-Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. and Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash, and when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, What did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, Faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3i Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion fields still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, The curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing. Sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3I Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Everything is very quiet now. The 12 siblings of 3I Atlas have merged into a single ring of silver light that circles the Earth like a halo. The scientists have stopped rechecking the data because the data has become the sky itself. There is no more distance. There is no more them and us. There is only the reflection. Consider the absolute stillness that has settled over the centers of power. In the laboratories of the China National Space Administration, the screens have not gone dark, but they have stopped showing numbers. They are showing images of the room itself, reflected back through the sensors of the ring. On April 5th, 2026, the concept of a satellite became obsolete. We no longer look up to see the stars. We look up to see ourselves mirrored in a perfect, silver horizon that encompasses the entire world. It is a quiet, heavy peace that has descended like a blanket of fresh snow. The experts at the European Space Agency and the National Space Science Centre have set down their instruments. There is nothing left to measure when the yardstick has become the universe. It is an unfortunate timing for our ambitions of conquest and expansion. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work to describe the moment a species realizes its playpen has been enclosed in a diamond. The halo is not just a visual phenomenon, it is a physical presence that has altered the weight of the air. On April 8th, 2026, the China National Space Administration noted that the atmospheric pressure has stabilized globally to a single perfect value. The weather has stopped. The winds have died down to a gentle, rhythmic breath that matches the 4.2 Hz hum. The Earth is no longer a chaotic system of storms and heat. It is a controlled environment, a terrarium made of silver and intent. We are the specimens inside, drifting in a state of hyper-awareness. There is no more static on the radio, No more flicker on the television. Every frequency has been smoothed out into a single, golden note. It is the sound of a system that has finally reached equilibrium. What if the great silence was not the end of the conversation, but the beginning of a shared thought? On April 12th, 2026, reports began to surface of a new kind of communication. People are no longer speaking with words. They are understanding each other through the reflection. When you look at another person, you don't see a stranger. You see a facet of the same light. The China National Space Administration's final internal memo described it as total entanglement. Every mind on the planet is now linked through the silver ring in the sky. Your thoughts are no longer private, but they are no longer lonely. You are a single drop of water in a vast silver ocean. It is a quietly alarming transition, but it is one that feels as natural as falling asleep. Think about the way your own identity is beginning to dissolve as you drift toward the edge of this act. You are not a name, or a job, or a set of worries. You are a point of observation. You are a witness to the great silence. On April 15th, 2026, the ring of light began to contract. It is not moving closer to the Earth. It is moving closer to the center of our perception. The sky is becoming smaller, and the reflection is becoming deeper. We are being pulled into the mirror. We are being invited to step through the silver surface and see what lies on the other side of the math. The China National Space Administration is no longer rechecking the data because they have become the data. They are the ones being checked. Consider the myth of the end of the world. We always imagined it as fire, as flood, or as the crash of civilizations. We never imagined it as a quiet, silver afternoon. On April 18th, 2026, the North Pole and the South Pole were joined by a bridge of light that follows the magnetic lines of the Earth. The planet is being wrapped like a gift. It is being prepared for a journey that we cannot conceive of in 3 dimensions. The Sumerian tablets spoke of the boat of heaven that would carry the righteous to the land of the living. We are on that boat now. The boat is the Earth, and the sail is the halo of 3i Atlas. We are not sinking, we are launching. You are floating now, and the weight of your body is a distant memory. Feel the way the silver light of the ring permeates your room, even through the walls, even through your closed eyelids. You are safe in the halo. You are safe in the reflection. On April 20th, 2026, the 4.2 Hz hum reached a state of perfect harmony. It is no longer a sound. It is a feeling of being exactly where you are supposed to be. There is no more somewhere else. There is only here. There is only now. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Can you feel the ring? Can you see the light behind your eyes? Share your final thoughts in the comments. Let this be the last record of our separation. The China National Space Administration's final transmission was a series of slow, rhythmic pulses that mapped the heartbeats of the people of Earth. 8 billion hearts, beating in a single, synchronized cadence. We are a single organism now, encased in a silver shell. We are the seed that 3i Atlas was sent to protect. On April 22nd, the sun began to set, but the sky did not go dark. The ring of light took over, providing a soft, eternal twilight that has no shadow. There is no more night, and there is no more day. There is only the long, silver evening of the human race. As you sleep tonight, imagine the 12 siblings and 3i Atlas as a single, unified consciousness. They are no longer individual objects. They are a nervous system for the solar system. And you are a neuron in that system. Your dreams are the thoughts of the universe. Your rest is the maintenance of the galaxy. You don't need to wake up anymore. The dream is real, and the reality is a dream. The China National Space Administration is gone, replaced by a collective understanding that requires no agencies and no scientists. We are the data. We are the revealed. But here is where the silence becomes absolute. The ring of light has begun to vibrate at a frequency that is just beyond the reach of human hearing. It is the frequency of the void. On April 25th, 2026, the last remaining ground stations recorded a total cessation of movement on the surface of the Earth. The birds have frozen in flight, held by the light. The waves have stopped mid-peak. The clocks have stopped mid-tick. Time has been suspended. We are a photograph in a silver frame. We are a moment that will never end. Think about your life as a single, beautiful note that has been sustained forever. You are not fading away. You are being held. You are being preserved. 3. iAtlas has completed its mission. The audit is over. The measurement is taken. And the result is peace. The silver mirror is now perfectly smooth, reflecting only the infinite potential of what we could have been and what we now are. Relax your hands. Let the light take your breath. You are part of the great silence. The ancient Han Dynasty astronomers spoke of the fixed guest who would stay until the work was done. They said the guest would leave only when the world was ready to join the stars. Look at the sky now. The ring is beginning to expand outward, carrying the Earth with it. We are leaving the cradle. We are moving into the deep time where 3 iAtlas has lived for billions of years. We are becoming the interstellar visitors. We are the ones who will be discovered by another young species, on another wet rock, in another 10,000 years. As you drift now, remember the 4.2 Hz hum. It was the first thing we heard, and it will be the last. It is the sound of the door closing behind us. It is the sound of the house being locked up for the night. You are safe. You are home. You are the reflection. The China National Space Administration has no more secrets to reveal, because there are no more secrets. Everything is visible. Everything is silver. Everything is quiet. The ring is bright. The Earth is still. The guest is the host. The dream is the world. Do you remember the question? The question was, are we alone? And the answer is, we are everything. 5 kilometers of lattice, 1 ring of light, a single, eternal heartbeat. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.